Hey guys, tonight we're going to step off the cobblestone streets of a medieval city and push open the crooked, groaning door of a brothel. The air is thick with sweat, stale ale, and something less describable. Candles flicker against greasy wood-paneled walls, and behind thin curtains, the murmurs of desperate men blend with the soft weeping of tired women. You've landed right in the belly of the underworld. No knights, no ballads, no romance. Just the cold, transactional machinery of flesh and coin. And yeah, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment to let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts with the stench. You smell it before you see anything. A sour blend of rotting wood, spilled ale, unwashed bodies, and something acrid that clings to the roof of your mouth. It's not the kind of place you find on a guided castle tour. No one builds postcards around it. But in a medieval town, the brothel was as common as the market square or the church nestled in the cracks of city life like mold and stone. You shuffle down a narrow, twisting alley, your boots skimming over sludge and rat droppings. A woman laughs high and fake somewhere ahead, and a man groans behind closed shutters. The building you approach leans to one side like it's tired of pretending it ever had dignity. The lantern outside sways with a painted red mark, sometimes a flower, sometimes just a smear. You don't knock. No one knocks. You just push the door open, and it drags across the warped floor with a guttural scrape. Inside the room is smoky and thick. Candles flicker low in iron sconces. The floor is sticky. A man is passed out on a bench. His mouth open flies orbiting lazily. At first glance, it's a tavern. But your eyes adjust, and the difference becomes clear. The women aren't drinking. They're watching. Always watching. For trouble. For coin. For their next buyer. A girl no older than 16, maybe younger, sidles up to you. She's powdered her cheeks with something pale, maybe flour, and her lips are stained with crushed berries. The effect is more ghostly than seductive. She asks your name with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. You lie. She doesn't care. You sit. She pours something dark into a cup and slides it to you. It burns. You ask what it is. She shrugs. Whatever didn't spoil. Behind her, a curtain flutters open. A woman stands there, older, not ancient, but worn like leather that's been soaked and dried too many times. She runs this place. The abbess of the nunnery they call her in town, half joking, half afraid. She's watching you, measuring. It's not glamorous, not even close. The women here are often sick with fevers that won't break or coughs that won't stop. Their teeth are bad, their skin worse. Many have lice. Almost all have something worse, something passed from man to man, mouth to mouth without understanding. The French disease, they whisper, though no one really knows who to blame. The beds upstairs are little more than straw pallets behind hanging cloth. If you're lucky, you might find one with a blanket. Most are just piles of itchy straw and the lingering warmth of the last visitor. Privacy is a myth. Sound travels through the walls like gossip. Moans, cries, screams sometimes. Those get ignored. But you're not just here for the mechanics of it. You want to understand. Why did this exist so pervasively? Why did towns and villages always have brothels? Because sex was survival, not pleasure, not romance. Just one more transaction in a world where most people didn't have enough food, warmth, or protection. For some women, working in a brothel was the least dangerous option. Others were forced, sold, orphaned, abandoned, or widowed. If they had a child, the child came too. Sometimes the child followed in the mother's footsteps before she bled for the first time. Some brothels were municipally licensed. That's right, your local mayor might have signed off on a house of ill repute. It kept things contained, they said, controlled. Men would find relief, women would find work, and cities would collect the tax. But the brothel was never safe. It was a place of disease, of violence, of power imbalance so absolute it barely needed to be spoken. If a man hurt a woman, she might report it. But who would care she was a whore? Her word didn't matter. If anything, she'd be the one punished for seduction, for being out of place, for existing too visibly. You hear a commotion in the back. A girl's voice shrill, then a heavy thud. No one moves. You glance at the girl beside you. She keeps pouring as if the sounds are thunder in the distance, ominous but too far away to flinch. Upstairs, the mattresses crawl with more than fleas. Many women die here, but not with drama. They waste away. One day they're coughing, the next. They're too weak to work, the next. They're carried out back and buried in a shallow grave. Some end up floating in the river. No one asks questions. And yet this place, this ruin of dignity, is humming with life, with politics, with secrets. Soldiers come here before battle priests, after vespers, merchants between trips. Sometimes the women know things before the mayor does. They're invisible but omnipresent living ghosts in their own town. You glance around. There's a woman in the corner with scars running down her neck. Another with bruises barely covered by her dress. They talk softly, exchange glances, guard each other. It's not sisterhood exactly, but it's survival. A whispered alliance. And just when you think you've seen it all, a door opens and in walks a boy, maybe 13, maybe 12. His eyes dart around. He's pale, and the madam she notices him frowns and says something sharp. He bolts. That was a warning. He's not meant to be here. Not yet, but he will be. Back in your seat, the girl who sat with you is gone. Another has taken her place, older, wearing a stained shift. She's tired. She doesn't smile. She asks if you're ready. Are you? Because this place doesn't pause, doesn't wait. Once you're inside, the door creaks shut, and no one checks if you ever leave. Time is measured in bodies and coins, and the night stretches endlessly forward. Welcome to the medieval brothel. You've only just arrived. You hesitate for a breath too long, and she notices. Everyone here notices hesitation. It's a weakness, a tell. The woman across from you doesn't push, though. She just shifts in her seat, the legs of her stool creaking against the sticky planks. Her eyes are dull, not from drink, but from having seen this dance play out too many times. You glance toward the stairwell in the corner. It coils upward into darkness, barely lit by a single candle sputtering against the damp stone wall. No banister, no promise that the steps won't betray your footing. The madam's gaze follows yours. She jerks her chin once. If you're going up, go up. If not, stop wasting space. The stairs groan as you climb, each step a complaint. The air thickens and the smell shifts, less smoke, more mildew. The sharp tang of urine and something iron-like hangs heavier here. A door swings open as you reach the landing. A man stumbles out, red-faced, breath wheezing. He zips up his trousers, ragged linen tied with leather, and stifles a hiccup. He doesn't look at you. No one looks at you unless they need something. To your left, a curtain draped across a doorway moves with a subtle breeze. You peek inside. The room is barely more than a box. A low cot, a clay basin with old water, a bucket in the corner. A girl sits cross-legged on the bed, combing lice from her hair with a small, broken-toothed comb. She hums under her breath. The tune is unrecognizable, a lullaby for no one. This is what privacy looks like here. A bit of cloth, a shallow breath of space. There are other rooms, too. One door is closed and you hear low murmurs behind it, negotiation or maybe prayer. Another is wide open, revealing nothing but a pile of straw and a wall stained with old blood. A rat watches you from the corner eyes like wet beads. You move on. There's no glamour, no velvet. You follow her. The hallway you enter is crooked and narrow, just wide enough for two shoulders to brush by. It smells of mildew, candle wax, and something earthy like damp soil mixed with blood. Your boots stick faintly to the floor. Ahead, a curtain sways, revealing a stairway that creaks under the weight of your steps. You're not alone. Footsteps echo from somewhere above. Whispers drift down like stray threads of thought. Each stair feels like a decision you didn't quite agree to. At the top, the hallway branches left and right. Thin cloths hang across open doorways, pretending to be doors. They don't block sound, or smell, or eyes that want to see. The woman leading you doesn't turn around. She gestures toward one of the openings and moves on, just like that. Transaction complete. You pause in the doorway. The room is barely a room. More of a wooden box, just large enough for a straw pallet, a bucket, and a candle flickering low on a crate. The mattress is dented in the center, stained. Something moves under the straw, possibly a rat, maybe just a trick of the light. You step inside and sit careful not to touch the wall, which sweats with dampness. Outside, someone is weeping. A woman's voice, hoarse and rhythmic like the waves of the sea. She's not loud, just persistent. The kind of weeping that doesn't expect comfort. That's been crying for so long it no longer expects anyone to care. And this is only the first hour of your night. You lay back and try to imagine the woman who slept here before you. Her scent still clings to the straw lavender and lye soap, trying in vain to cover sickness. Maybe she was new, maybe she was desperate. Maybe she wasn't even supposed to be here yet. One thing is certain, she wasn't here for love. Because love has no home here. Love gets you killed. It makes you soft. And softness doesn't last long in a medieval brothel. You hear someone coming down the hallway. Bare feet. Slow steps. The cloth door rustles and a face appears. Different woman, maybe 30. Hard lines around her eyes. She looks you over, tired but not unkind. "I'm Agnes," she says. Her voice is low. She sets down a basin of water and a cloth. "You look lost." "You are." But she doesn't wait for your answer. She dips the cloth in water and wrings it out. offers it to you. The water is cool, not clean but refreshing. She leans against the crate, crossing her arms, watching you like a puzzle she's seen 1,000 times and stopped trying to solve. This used to be a brewery, she says, nodding at the walls. Before the war. Now it's this. You ask her how she ended up here. Agnes smiles, a brittle thing. Storm washed out the mill. My husband drank what was left of our coin. Then he drank the river, found me here 3 months later, broke my nose, then drowned in the canal. She speaks like she's reciting a shopping list. Not out of numbness, but necessity. That's how trauma survives here. You fold it into words, say them enough times, and they lose their teeth. Agnes gets up. You're lucky it's early. Things get worse around midnight. She doesn't elaborate. You don't ask. She disappears back through the cloth, leaving the scent of soap and old fear behind her. From your tiny room, the building's sounds come alive, creaking wood laughter, laced with cruelty, the thump of bodies against thin walls. Occasionally a scream, sometimes a chant or prayer, and sometimes silence that feels worse than the noise. You close your eyes, but sleep won't come. The bed scratches your back. Fleas bite at your ankles. A man down the hall yells something unintelligible. Then glass breaks. Then footsteps. Then nothing. And the hours drag on. Eventually, the madam appears again, her steps firmer, more deliberate. She carries a ledger. She's checking rooms, checking who's paid, who hasn't, who's working, who's faking illness, who's run off. She knocks once on your frame, just hard enough to startle. Don't fall asleep in here without paying, she says flatly. Or you'll wake up without boots. You nod, though you're not sure if it's a joke. She moves on. Downstairs, the drinking continues. Not merry drinking, dull drinking. Like everyone's trying to forget something impossible to name. All flows freely, but not for the women. They're expected to serve it, not sip it. Too much drink dulls your edge. A dulled girl is a dead girl. Every so often, someone plays a lute. Badly. The same song again and again. It's called The Candle's End. You hear someone mutter, fitting. By now the streets outside have gone quiet. The city sleeps uneasily. But this place never stops. It pulses with broken rhythm, transaction after transaction. No one talks about it that way, but that's what it is. A loop, a pattern, a system with no exit. And you realize something: most of these women won't leave. Not because they can't, but because they have nowhere to go. If they're lucky, they age into invisibility, work in the kitchens, sweep the floors, tend the sick. If they're unlucky, their bodies give out too soon, and they vanish between one season and the next. No gravestone, no ceremony. Just a different girl in the same bed with the same haunted stare. It's nearly dawn when you sit up again. The candle is nothing but wax now. Someone has collapsed against your doorway, drunk or dead. It's hard to say. You nudge them gently. They groan and roll over. Just drunk. You stand, legs aching. Your feet are cold. The room feels smaller now. In the hallway, Agnes is back. She's sweeping. Quietly, methodically, like it matters. Morning, she murmurs without looking up. You made it through. Did you? The sun hasn't quite risen, but the sky is softening. That gray-blue hue that means another day has arrived whether you're ready or not. From a small window, you glimpse smoke curling up from a chimney, a child crying in the distance, a cart creaking past. Life goes on, even here, especially here. You pass back through the curtain and down the stairs. The main room is quieter now. Men slumped over tables. A girl asleep on her feet, leaning against the wall. The madam is nowhere to be seen. She's counting coins somewhere, no doubt, preparing for another round. You reach the door, the same door you walked through what feels like a lifetime ago. You hesitate. Not out of fear, but because now you understand. This place, this forgotten corner of medieval life holds more than just misery. It holds stories, scars, silent resistance, and an unspoken truth. Not every battle is fought with swords. Some are fought with survival. You step outside. The alley is empty, but you are not the same. The morning air hits you like a slap, sharp, cold, and real. After the suffocating heat and staleness inside, it feels like waking up from drowning. You blink against the gray light and look around. The alley is narrow and crooked, flanked by leaning buildings with peeling plaster and soot-stained walls. A cat darts past, chasing something invisible. Somewhere a butcher sharpens his knives. A church bell rings distantly, its solemn rhythm at odds with the world you just stepped out of. You walk slowly at first, then faster, as if moving your legs will shake off the memory clinging to you like oil. But it doesn't work. The brothel is behind you, yet it's still wrapped around your shoulders like a wet shroud. It follows in the drag of your breath, in the itch of your skin, in the knowledge that you weren't just a visitor. You were a witness. But the world doesn't pause for your thoughts. By the time you reach the town square, the city is already unfolding. Market stalls creak open. Vendors shout half-hearted greetings. Women carry baskets balanced on their hips, children tugging at their skirts. A man coughs thickly into a cloth and keeps walking. Business as usual. And yet now that you know what's behind the shuttered windows and crooked alleys, you see more clearly. You notice the tired girl sweeping the steps of the tavern, bruises peeking from under her sleeve. You see the boy in the shadows, counting coins and glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. You see the priest walking briskly past, eyes forward, collar straight, too polished. What was he doing last night? There are brothels like the one you visited in every city. Sometimes they're disguised as bathhouses, inns, or boarding homes. Other times, they're licensed openly, operating with the city's knowledge and profit. In some towns, there are even designated red light districts where women are confined like cattle, paraded during feast days, and hidden when bishops come to visit. You pass by one such district now. It's still quiet this early, but you see the shutters painted red, cracked with age. You see the broken shoes discarded outside the curled straw mattresses airing in the sun. And though no one says the word, everyone knows. People pretend not to see the girls in the windows. They walk faster, avert their eyes. But they know. Just as they know where the bread is cheapest, or which butcher salts his meat too early. You stop at a public well. Women gather around it, gossiping quietly as they fill buckets. One of them, young, freckled, missing a front tooth, laughs too loudly. The others shush her, glancing around. You catch fragments of their conversation. A girl named Elsbeth ran off. Someone saw her board a cart headed east. Another says she'll be back within a week, with her ribs cracked or not at all. They all nod grimly. Elsbeth was probably one of them. You sip from the well's edge and taste iron. It's not clean water. Nothing is truly clean here, not the air, not the people, not even the church. You keep walking, past the stables, past the blacksmith, whose face is smudged with soot and anger, past a row of houses, each one slightly more miserable than the last. The town seems to decay the deeper you go, as if rot starts at the center and eats outward. And somewhere in this rot hidden just beneath the skin, the brothels thrive. Not because anyone wants them to, but because no one knows how to live without them. Eventually, you reach the city walls. Outside is farmland forest and the long road to elsewhere. You could leave. But where would you go? The truth is, this wasn't just one night in one brothel. This was a system, a reality woven into the structure of medieval life. And it wasn't just women. Boys, too, were sometimes swept into this world, especially in port towns or war-ravaged cities where order collapsed and hunger ruled. Some were taken in by older madams who specialized in specialty houses. Others were simply forced, owned, traded like livestock. Their stories are rarely written down, their names even less so. And then there were the punishments. The hypocrisy was staggering. A woman caught selling her body might be whipped, branded, or imprisoned. A man caught purchasing her services, usually a fine, unless he was noble. Then a quiet word, maybe a stern glance from a bishop, and all was forgotten. The burden always landed on the back of the powerless. You've heard of sumptuary laws, rules about who could wear what, eat what, sleep where. In some towns, prostitutes were forced to wear yellow veils or specific dresses so they could be identified at a glance. These weren't just fashion statements, they were public shame embroidered into fabric. It was legal segregation before the term existed. You wander further beyond the town's reach to a rise overlooking the fields. From here, you can see the spires of the churches, the winding river, the open gate. The city looks peaceful from a distance. Serene, even. You wouldn't know that tucked beneath one of those spires is a house of misery. That one of the stained glass saints might have passed a brothel on his way to canonization. The contradiction is everywhere. Church and brothel side by side. The same men donating to both. On Sundays, priests preached against lust, against women, against the body as temptation. And then by twilight, those same priests sometimes passed through a back door, paid a coin, and left with their cassocks ruffled. Some even had favorites. Some fathered children. The irony was well known, rarely spoken, and almost never punished. You sit on the rise and watch the town wake. And you wonder how many women are praying for a miracle they know won't come. How many girls are learning too soon that their value is calculated by how well they fake a smile. How many boys are standing at doors begging not to be chosen tonight. There's a heaviness to this place, but also a strange strength. Some of the women you met last night will survive. A few might escape. Even fewer might find someone kind, a baker maybe, or a widow, who needs help. Most won't, but some will. Agnes will. You feel it. She has that look the one people get when they've lost too much to lose again. The look that says, "I'm not dead yet." You stand and brush the dirt from your clothes. The sun has climbed higher now, warming the back of your neck. Somewhere in the fields, a plowman whistles. And behind you, in that city of stone and secrets, the brothel still waits. Another night will come. Another face will arrive. Another name will be forgotten. But you will remember, because now you've seen it. And seeing is something that cannot be undone. The days pass, but you find yourself circling back, drawn not by curiosity anymore, but by something heavier. Obligation, maybe. Guilt. Or perhaps just the need to make sense of what most would rather ignore. You try to blend back into the rhythms of medieval life, but the rhythm has changed. Once you've seen behind the veil, the village fair feels hollow. The sermons sound thinner, and every smiling face seems like a mask that could slip at any moment. On the fourth night, just as the sun begins to bleed into the horizon, you take a slow walk past the brothel again. This time you don't enter. You linger near the alley's mouth just far enough to watch without being watched. A wagon rattles past. Two drunk men stumble out the door, arguing over coin. The madam appears in the doorway for a brief moment, arms crossed, eyeing the street like a hawk. Then she disappears inside. You recognize one of the women who passes through the entryway behind her. It's the girl who first served you that night, the one with the berry-stained lips and the flour-dusted cheeks. But now her face is bare, pale, and chapped from the cold. She moves slower. Her eyes don't lift. Something inside you tightens. You stay hidden in the shadows, watching as lanterns are lit inside. They glow yellow through warped glass and thin curtains turning the windows into flickering eyes. The sounds begin again, laughter, groans, boots stomping, a sudden shriek that dies out before anyone reacts. Just another night. But then from down the alley, a second building draws your eye. Smaller, newer, less stained by time. It's not a brothel, not exactly. It's a reform house, one of the church-run institutions meant to save fallen women. You've heard of them. They promise redemption, but often deliver confinement, punishment, and labor. Girls sent there work long days, spinning wool, scrubbing floors, reciting prayers until their knees bleed. Forgiveness costs everything. You decide to visit in the morning. When the sun rises, you find the doors already open. A nun stands at the threshold, her habit stiff with starch. Her face is unreadable, but her eyes flick to your boots, your hands, your clothes. She lets you in without a word. Inside, the air is cleaner, but colder. The girls young mostly sit at benches, weaving sewing stitching. They work in silence. Their hair is cropped short. Their eyes rarely meet yours. The room is lined with crucifixes, one between every window. Redemption is everywhere, but so is fear. You speak to one of the sisters, ask her about the brothel down the alley. She doesn't flinch. She tells you plainly, the girls who repent are welcome here. The ones who don't well, some darkness chooses to remain in darkness. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. You leave without asking more, because deep down you already know. There is no clean place for a woman to go once she's been stained by the brothel. The stain isn't real, it's something society invents tattoos onto her name, her skin, her soul. And it doesn't wash out, not even with prayer. That night, back in the city's heart, a fire breaks out. You hear the bells first clanging in alarm and then the shouting. You rush toward the noise breath clouding in the chill air. A bakery is ablaze. Flames climb the side of a wooden building, like fingers reaching for heaven. Townsfolk throw buckets of water, form a shaky line from the well. Children scream, horses rear. Chaos unfolds like a nightmare. But it isn't the fire that stops your breath. It's the figures stumbling from a back alley, their faces blackened with soot clothes torn, clutching each other. Women. 3 of them. You recognize Agnes among them. Her face is streaked with ash, but her eyes are sharp alert. She holds a girl by the wrist, too young, too limp. They disappear into the crowd before you can reach them. The fire rages for hours. When it finally dies down, 1/3 of the street is destroyed. Rumors churn. Someone blames an unattended lantern. Another says it was a fight turned ugly. A third claims a curse, too many sins on that street, an old man mutters. You walk the perimeter, helping where you can, your hands blistered and numb. But your thoughts stay on Agnes. Did she escape the brothel for good? Was this her moment? Or was it just another detour before the door swings closed again? The next day, you return to the brothel. You need to know, but it's closed. For the first time since you arrived, the red mark on the door is gone. The windows are shuttered, bolted from within. No footsteps, no laughter, no flickering lights, just silence. You ask around. No one knows anything. Or maybe they're pretending not to. One man says the madam left town. Another says the building's being repaired. A third laughs bitterly. They always reopen. Give it a week, but you don't believe that. Because something's changed. You can feel it in the way people walk past the alley, quieter, more cautious. Like something sacred burned down, even if it was never holy. Later that evening, you sit at a small tavern near the edge of town. The fire crackles softly in the hearth. A bard plucks a quiet tune. The room smells of stew and smoke. It's calm here, even warm. You sip your ale, eyes drifting to the doorway, half expecting Agnes to walk through. She doesn't. But you hold on to the image of her soot-covered and unbroken, leading that girl by the hand, like a mother pulling her child from a storm. She didn't look back. She didn't ask permission. She just moved. And in that moment, you understood something deeper than pity or outrage. The brothel was never just about exploitation. It was about power. About who gets to take it. About who's allowed to survive. About who is left behind to rot quietly in corners while the world spins on. But sometimes, rarely, someone reaches out through the smoke, grabs another hand, and runs. Not to save the world, but to save one's soul. And that is enough. The town doesn't talk about the fire after a few days. It fades from conversation, like a cough smothered behind a sleeve, acknowledged once, then forgotten, out of politeness or fear. The brothel's shutters remain closed. The red smear above the door is gone entirely, now scrubbed away, though a faint outline still lingers in the wood grain, like blood that's soaked too deep to vanish. You begin to notice a shift in the faces around town. The girls who once loitered outside the bathhouse or leaned in doorways with forced smiles are nowhere to be seen. Not vanished exactly, just absorbed into the streets again, faceless among the vendors and laundresses, blending with the cooks and scullery maids. The line between working woman and fallen woman was never real to begin with. It was a fantasy the town whispered to make itself feel moral. But even so, the absence feels strange, like a silence that means more than sound. You find yourself pacing the same streets again, drawn to the ordinary, searching for fragments of the extraordinary. A group of boys throws stones at a dead rat. A girl scrubs clothes in the icy water of a public basin. A mother drags her child by the wrist while yelling about bread gone missing. All these images blur together into one long stretch of survival. And then one morning outside the chapel, you see her. Agnes. She's dressed plainly now, rough brown wool, a scarf tied over her hair. She carries a bundle of firewood on one shoulder and speaks quietly to a younger girl beside her. The girl looks clean, thin but upright. Her face bears the unmistakable look of someone who's seen too much too early and survived. You move closer. Agnes doesn't flinch. She sees you coming and gives a nod, subtle but sure. You greet her quietly, not wanting to draw attention. She doesn't smile, but her eyes soften. "I thought you were gone," you say. "I was," she replies, "but not far." You ask if she's all right. She shrugs. "We're breathing." "That's a start." The girl beside her fidgets. Agnes rests a hand gently on her back. "This is Marta," she adds. "She's starting over." Marta looks up. Her eyes are wary but curious. She nods barely. You nod back. You don't ask what happened after the fire. You don't ask where they went or what they've endured. Some stories don't need telling. They sit between people like shared weights, too sacred or too painful to voice. Instead, you offer to carry the wood. Agnes lets you, which feels like a kind of trust. You walk with them down winding back lanes that snake away from the main square, past rows of hovels patched with cloth and clay, past empty wells and crumbling stairwells. Finally, you arrive at a small cottage on the edge of town. Smoke curls from the chimney. A goat bleats softly in the pen. It's modest, cramped, but safe. Inside, the fire crackles. Bread rests on a wooden board. A single stool, a pile of blankets, a small woven mat on the floor. It's not much, but it's theirs. Agnes sets down her bundle and stretches her arms, wincing slightly. You notice the scar at her collarbone faded now, but sharp under the skin. A reminder. Marta sits near the fire and begins slicing the bread. She hums softly, out of tune, almost inaudible. The sound tugs at something deep in you. Agnes pours you a cup of watered wine. It's weak, but warm. "I've started helping at the herb woman's hut," she says. "She's too old to lift her own mortar anymore." I chop, mix, listen. You smile. "Good work." She nods. I've always known how to listen. That night, as darkness falls again, you stay longer than you meant to. Marta dozes curled by the hearth. Agnes tidies quietly. No need for words. There's comfort in the silence. And yet something in you burns to ask the question. So you do. Do you think it'll ever be different? For girls like Marta, Agnes pauses, then slowly sits beside you. "I think the world only changes when people like her don't give up," she says, "and when people like you don't forget." You nod. But she's not finished. "And when people like me," she adds, "teach others how to see." She says it without pride. It's just a fact. You walk home under a moonless sky. The town is quiet, but your mind isn't. You remember the faces from your first night, the girl with the powdered cheeks, the woman with the scars, the boy who tried to enter too soon, the priest who slipped in unnoticed, the cry that no one responded to. And you remember the rooms, the smells, the sound of a body collapsing against a door. You remember the ledger in the madam's hand, the way she scanned each bed like a banker reviewing accounts. None of it leaves you. It lingers, lives in your memory now, where it's harder to silence. But you also remember this Agnes walking through smoke, gripping Marta's wrist like a lifeline. You tell yourself that matters. In the days that follow, you return to your ordinary duties, fetching water, splitting wood, trading at market. But nothing is quite the same. You speak less, observe more. You begin to notice who flinches when a man raises his voice, who avoids eye contact, who never laughs even when everyone else does. You notice. And that noticing, that small, simple act, becomes your resistance. Because the brothel is never just a place. It's a symptom, a symbol, a shadow cast by a society that values control more than compassion, that believes silence is safer than truth, that teaches its daughters to survive but not to speak. But some do speak, some walk through fire, some reach for others, and some, like you, choose to see. The season begins to shift. The early frost creeps in at dawn, dusting rooftops with white biting at your fingertips as you carry water or kindle a fire. Smoke lingers longer in the air, and the townsfolk wear heavier wool cloaks, grumbling about firewood prices and thinning grain stores. Winter, even in the best of homes, is a test. But for the poor, for the ones living in drafty shacks and back alley hovels, it can be a death sentence. You think of Agnes and Marta often. You pass their cottage every few days now, always keeping a respectful distance unless invited. Sometimes you leave small bundles, cheese apples, a bit of cloth. Nothing grand. Just enough to say you're not forgotten. Sometimes Agnes waves from the doorway. Sometimes she doesn't. But you know she sees. And as the cold deepens, you see something else beginning to happen. Marta starts helping in the herb woman's hut, too. You spot her grinding dried roots, mixing salves, crushing cloves into thick paste. Her hands are clumsy, but determined. She frowns when she spills, tries again, when she fails. The herb woman, Breda, old as bark, barely speaks, but watches everything. You begin to wonder if healing is possible. Not just the physical kind, but the kind that sinks into the bones, that settles into a soul fractured by years of being used, discarded, ignored. You see glimpses. Marta laughs once, just once, when she nearly drops a pot of honey water, and Breda grunts something unintentionally funny. It's quick, shy, but real. A real laugh. You carry the sound with you all day like a gem in your pocket. Still, the world doesn't stop being brutal just because one girl smiled. A new brothel opens 2 streets over, smaller, cleaner at least on the outside. The sign is subtler this time, just a plain white cloth above the door. No red marks, but people know. The town always knows. You hear whispers before the doors even open. A new kind of place, some say. Gentler, safer. Others scoff. There's no gentle way to sell someone's body, mutters the baker's wife under her breath. Curiosity gnaws at you, so one evening you walk past it. The building is bright. Too bright. Candles glow behind sheer curtains. The entryway smells of lavender and fresh-cut wood. The girl at the threshold is older, well-dressed, smiling. She looks trained, like someone taught her exactly how long to hold a gaze, how to tilt her head just enough to flatter. She says hello as you pass, sweet and distant, already looking toward the next customer. Inside, laughter rings out. Not harsh, but rehearsed. The floorboards are new. The plaster is smooth. There's even a small garden out front. You almost believe it. Almost. But then you see the eyes. One girl sitting just beyond the curtain looks directly at you. Her posture is perfect. Her dress unwrinkled. Her hands rest neatly in her lap. But her eyes are hollow. Not tired. Not angry. Just empty, like someone who climbed inside herself and locked the door from within. And in that instant, the facade cracks. This place, for all its polish and charm, is still a brothel. Still a place where consent is a performance, pain is a business risk, and freedom is a sales pitch. You walk away. Back through the town square, past the bakery, where soot rises from the chimney, past the church, where a new friar has begun preaching about sin with alarming vigor. You pause, listening from the edge of the crowd. He speaks of lust, of fallen women, of cities steeped in filth. His voice is thunderous, face red from exertion. But his gaze never once touches the merchants in silk. He never mentions the lords who visit the brothels or the bishops who dine with madams behind closed doors. It's always the women who sin, never the men who purchase them. You glance around and see a few people nodding, a few clenching fists. But others, especially the older women, stare at him with silent loathing. You see Breda among them. Her arms crossed her mouth, a hard line. When he finishes, she spits at the ground and walks away without a word. Later that evening, as the wind howls down the alleyways and shutters rattle against stone walls, you visit Agnes again. She's inside tending the fire Marta curled beside it. The room smells of broth and smoke and mint. You tell her about the new brothel. Her jaw tenses. "I knew they'd try again," she says. You sit in silence for a while, sipping hot wine. "Do you ever think about going back?" You ask, not out of suspicion, but curiosity. Agnes doesn't blink. Sometimes, when coin runs low, when Marta gets sick, when it rains 3 days and the roof leaks like a sieve, you wait. But then I remember the sound of that place, the way the door latched behind me, like a coffin, and I can't go back, even if I starve. Marta doesn't speak, but her hand curls tighter around the blanket. She's listening. You reach into your satchel and pull out a small pouch herbs you purchased from a traveler, something for fever. Agnes takes it gently, with a nod of thanks. It's a small gesture, but small things matter here. Before you leave, she says something that stays with you for days. Even if they keep building new brothels, she murmurs, we'll keep building something else. Maybe not louder, but deeper, stronger. We don't need more doors to walk into, we need roots. Roots. You repeat the word to yourself as you step back into the wind. Roots grow silently, invisibly, underground. But over time, they crack stone lift buildings, turn dust into shelter. The town doesn't know it yet, but roots are spreading. And one day, they might bloom. The winter deepens. Frost thickens on the windows of every home, lace patterns drawn by the breath of a season that never learned mercy. You wake each morning with cold in your bones and ash in your lungs, from the damp wood smoldering overnight. The town slows to a crawl. People speak less, shoulders, hunched breath, puffing in clouds. And though no one says it aloud, everyone's watching the sky, waiting for the next snowfall, like it's a punishment promised. Despite the weather, you keep moving. Your feet trace familiar paths past the markets, now half empty, past the chapel where the firebrand friar still bellows about moral decay, though fewer people stop to listen, and past the garden in front of the new brothel, now dusted with frost, its beauty dulled. The girl with the hollow eyes still sits at the window sometimes. You never see her smile. One evening you linger nearby just long enough to watch the patrons come and go. Men with furs and coin faces, red from wine, wind their steps unsteady but eager. One man pauses at the door, straightens his collar, and enters like a guest at a noble's feast. But there's no feast in there, only hunger, the kind that never gets full. You turn your back to it and walk on. A week later, news spreads. A girl from the new brothel has died. Not suddenly, but quietly. They say it was illness. They say it was cold. They say it was her time. But the whispers don't line up. Some say she collapsed while fetching water. Others claim she hadn't spoken in days. The madam insists she was treated well, that these things happen. But no one buys it. The townspeople don't riot. They never do, but you see the way they glance at that building now, the unease in their expressions. The illusion of safety, of a better brothel, has cracked. You walk to Agnes's cottage. She already knows. I heard it this morning, she says, wiping her hands on a cloth. Name was Elena. You nod. You remember the name from the corner of a ledger once. A name written beside a sum. A life reduced to a line of accounting. Do you think she chose it, you ask? Agnes doesn't answer at first. She stokes the fire, dusting ash onto the floor. No one chooses that, she says finally. Not really. They choose not to starve. They choose not to freeze. That's not the same. Marta is quiet. She sits by the window, weaving something out of frayed string nets, maybe, or traps. You can't tell. Her face is older now. Not in years, but in bearing. She watches you both without blinking. Agnes sees your eyes shift. She's been dreaming again, she says, voice low. Wakes up shaking. You ask what of. Agnes hesitates, then answers anyway. The hallway. From the old place, she says it stretches forever, and someone's always coming. You don't know what to say. There is no spell against nightmares, no herb for memory. But you stay, and over time that becomes something, a new ritual. On the coldest nights, you join them for supper, black bread, thin stew, warm silence. Marta begins to speak more. Just fragments at first, then whole thoughts. Sometimes she asks questions. One night she asks what stars are. Another she asks if fire remembers what it burns. The girl is healing. Slowly, yes. But healing. And you begin to notice others, too. There's the laundress near the mill, who used to work the upstairs room in the old brothel. She has a new limp and fewer teeth, but she carries herself like a woman reborn. There's the baker's niece who now lives with her aunt after escaping a man who paid for her like livestock. And there's an old crone who sells needles no one knew. She once ran her own house long ago before her back bent. and her hair turned white. These women live among the town unnoticed, but they are the story behind the story. The spine beneath the skin. You decide to help in quiet ways. You carry sacks, fix roofs, deliver wood where no one else will. Sometimes you teach children letters. You don't talk about brothels, but the people you help know that you know. And that changes something. It builds trust, which in this town is rarer than bread. One snowy morning, Breda, the herb woman, sends for you. You arrive to find her pale, her hands trembling. A fever has taken hold, deep and sudden. Marta is already there, kneeling beside the hearth, grinding something into a poultice. Her hands don't shake. Her eyes don't wander. She works with the precision of someone who once had no control and now guards every drop of it fiercely. Agnes helps too, heating cloths, murmuring prayers under her breath. You fetch water, chop kindling, do what you're told. By nightfall, Breda is asleep, still burning, but resting. The cottage smells of mint and bitter bark. The floor is littered with cloths and bowls. Marta sits beside the bed, watching the old woman breathe. She'll be all right, she says. Not a question. You nod, and for the first time you believe it. You walk back to your lodging alone. Snow falls quietly, muffling the sounds of the town. A dog barks once, then is silent. The streets are nearly empty. But you're not alone. You're walking through a world where ghosts live in every corner. Women like Elena, like the girl with powdered cheeks, like the ones who vanished between seasons. But you're also walking through a world of survivors. Agnes, Marta, the laundress, the baker's niece, the old crone with the needles. Each one proof that healing is not just possible but inevitable if given space and time and the dignity of being seen. The brothel hasn't disappeared. Its windows still glow. Its door still opens. But now something else stands beside it. A memory. A resistance. A seed. And seeds are dangerous things, because in time they grow. The snow doesn't let up for days. It falls thick and steady, blanketing the town in a hush that feels both peaceful and precarious. Chimneys smoke around the clock, villagers trudge through drifts with lowered heads, and the marketplace becomes a skeleton of what it once was, just a few vendors, a few desperate buyers, and a great silence broken only by the crunch of boots on frozen slush. You keep close to the homes that need help most. Marta has taken to carrying firewood on her shoulders, even though it's too heavy for her frame. Agnes scolds her every time, but Marta doesn't stop. She says she needs to feel strong. You understand. After being powerless for so long, lifting anything wood, a pot, a voice feels like resurrection. One evening you arrive at their cottage to find the door open, the fire roaring and laughter spilling into the snow. Inside, Marta is showing Agnes a small doll she's stitched together from scrap cloth and stray yarn. Its face is crooked, its limbs uneven, but it has eyes. It has shape. It's real. Agnes chuckles softly. What's its name? Elena. Marta answers without hesitation. There's a long pause. Then Agnes nods once solemnly. Good. They don't need to say anything else. The dead deserve remembering. And in this tiny act of creation, Marta has done something revolutionary. She's taken what was lost and given it a second life. Not in sorrow, but in care. in softness. The brothel taught her how to disappear, but now she's learning how to build. After supper, you sit by the fire and listen as Agnes tells a story. Not a happy one, not exactly, but one laced with meaning. It's about a girl who escaped a lord's manor after years of captivity, only to find herself living alone in the forest, where she learned the names of every tree and every bird, and grew old with no one but the wind for company. Marta listens rapt. And was she lonely, she asks. Agnes stares into the flames. No, she says at last. Not lonely, just free. The next morning, you walk with Agnes to the edge of town where the snow is deeper and the buildings thinner. She's heard of a widow who's fallen ill, no family, no neighbors close enough to check on her. It's half a mile through icy mud, and the wind bites at your cheeks like teeth. But Agnes presses on, scarf tight around her face, steps steady. You find the widow half frozen under a blanket, coughing blood into a rag. Her fire's gone out. Her roof leaks. There's mold around the walls. Agnes kneels beside her, takes her hand and calls for water. You run to fetch it. By the time you return, the old woman is wrapped in Marta's spare blanket. Agnes had tied it under her cloak. She brews a bitter tea from herbs tucked in a pouch sewn into her tunic. She's learned this. She's memorized each root and stem. You see it now. Agnes is becoming something else, something more than a survivor, a midwife to the broken. In the weeks that follow, word spreads quietly, not about the brothel, not about its patrons. Those secrets stay buried as always, but about Agnes, about the herb woman's new helper, about the girl with the mended doll who tends fires and washes linens for the sick, about the stranger you who asks no payment but carries what others cannot. People begin to knock on the door of Agnes's cottage. They come with wounds and fevers, with letters they cannot read, with bruises they don't speak of. And every time Agnes answers, she doesn't perform miracles. She listens. And in a town where few do, that's enough. One night a woman arrives at the door with her face hidden beneath a scarf. She doesn't give a name. She doesn't speak at all. But she clutches her belly as if holding something fragile. Agnes leads her in without question. The labor begins before dawn. It's brutal, long, loud, and violent. The girl screams through cracked lips, her eyes wild with fear. Agnes crouches beside her, barking instructions, wiping sweat, catching blood. Marta heats water over the fire. You keep the door shut tight, blocking out the cold. The child is born just after first light. A girl, small, red, loud. The mother weeps not for joy, but for release. Agnes wraps the child and places her against the mother's chest. Marta kneels beside them both, staring silent. You've never seen her eyes so wide. Later, as the mother sleeps, Agnes turns to you. She came from the new brothel, she says. I recognize the scarf. They let her go because she was too far along. She made it here on foot. You glance at the child, already swaddled, already dreaming. What will they do, you ask? Agnes shrugs. Whatever they can. That afternoon, you step outside to chop wood. The snow has stopped, but the clouds hang heavy, a low gray ceiling that presses on the rooftops. Your breath comes in slow, measured clouds. You think of the mother in the other room. You think of Elena gone, of Marta stitching dolls, of Agnes pouring tea and catching babies and reciting the names of herbs like prayers. The brothel still exists. It may always exist, like rot in a beam or mold in a wall. It survives by hiding in plain sight. But now you've seen something more powerful than shame. You've seen a place where healing happens, where silence is broken by stories, where memory becomes ritual, where even in the deepest snow, someone finds the strength to open the door. And for the first time in this long, bitter winter, you feel something bloom beneath your ribs. Not hope exactly, but the thing that comes before it. Resolve. The thaw is slow. It creeps in at first as small signs the groan of melting icicles, the rivulets that trickle down the stone gutters, the sudden softness of ground that's been frozen hard for months. The town responds cautiously. No one trusts the weather yet. But the worst of winter seems to have passed, for now. Inside Agnes's cottage, the hearth is still lit day and night, but the air no longer bites the way it once did. The child, now several weeks old, cries with the full voice of life. The mother whose name you learn is Corinne has begun to move again, eat, speak. She talks little about where she came from, but Marta doesn't press, and neither does Agnes, because here no one needs to confess to be forgiven. Corinne keeps to herself most days, but she helps where she can, boiling water, folding cloth, rocking the child, when her arms aren't too sore. She stares into the fire, often lips moving without sound, as if she's praying or reliving something too large to put into words. Agnes watches over her like an older sister, neither indulgent nor distant. She knows the rhythm of healing better than anyone. And you're part of the rhythm now. You chop wood when supplies run low. You make trips to the market for dried beans and old apples. You repair the cracked door with scrap lumber and quiet care. No one asks you to. No one needs to. In this place, every small act of kindness is a rebellion. The townspeople have noticed. Though few say it aloud, the eyes that once slid past you with suspicion now linger a little longer. There's recognition. A quiet nod here, a loaf of bread left at the step there. Even the friar who still preaches fire on Sundays has grown quieter when passing you on the road. Perhaps he's seen the changes. Perhaps he feels them pressing in against the walls of his clean, trembling sermons. One afternoon, as you return from the baker's, you find Marta waiting at the edge of the garden. She waves you over. She wants to leave, Marta says. Corinne. You blink. Where would she go? She didn't say, just away. East, maybe. She has a sister there. Or did. You stand in silence beside her. The garden is soggy with meltwater, the soil too wet for planting. But beneath the surface, you know roots are stirring. You've seen it before. I told her I'd help pack Marta ads. Then almost a whisper, I want her to make it. You nod. So do I. That night, Corinne wraps her daughter in the same shawl she wore on the day of the birth, the one stained with birth water and ash and milk. She doesn't own much. A second dress, a knife, a pouch of dried herbs, a ribbon from her mother frayed at the edges. Marta helps her tie it around her wrist like a charm. Agnes prepares her a bundle of food, hands it over without fanfare. She kisses the baby once gently on the forehead and says nothing. It's not goodbye. Not really. Just release. You walk Corinne to the edge of town. The stars are out. cold light on a cold road. But Corinne's steps are firm. She doesn't look back. The last thing she says before disappearing into the trees is this: "Tell her she gave me back my name." You return in silence. Marta's already asleep, curled beside the hearth. Agnes is outside splitting wood. She'll make it, she says, without looking up. You nod, watching the moon rise. Over the next few weeks, the house feels different. Not empty, just quieter. The baby's cries no longer echo in your dreams. The air carries the scent of fresh herbs again. Even Marta hums sometimes, sweeping the floor or hanging linens to dry. She's growing taller, sharper. You realize she's watching Agnes constantly, how she prepares tea, how she speaks to visitors, how she listens. You realize she's learning how to take over. And Agnes, she's slowing. Just a little. A stiffness in her knees. A breath that comes short when she climbs the hill too quickly. She won't speak of it, but you see it. The years in the brothel weren't kind to her body. There are wounds that never healed properly. Nights she still wakes from sweating, gasping, heart racing. But even now she stands strong. Not unbroken, but precisely broken in the way that allows light to shine through. One evening while Marta sleeps and the fire is low, she turns to you and says, "I used to believe there were only two kinds of people in the world, the ones who hurt others and the ones who get hurt. You wait." But I was wrong. There's a third kind, the ones who stay, the ones who sit beside you in silence, who carry things when your hands are too full, who don't ask questions you can't answer. She looks at you then. You're that kind. You don't know what to say, so you say nothing. Because she's right. The next day, a new visitor arrives. Not a woman, this time a boy. Thin, pale, barely more than 12. He stands at the edge of the path, arms crossed, eyes wary. When Agnes steps outside, he flinches. But she smiles. "We've been expecting you," she says. And somehow it's true. His name is Thomas. He doesn't speak much at first, just nods or shakes his head when spoken to. He eats hungrily, sleeps in fits, wakes screaming once, twice, 3 times before the week is over. But Marta sits with him. She makes him a doll, too. It has no name, but it has arms that hold and a body that doesn't break. And slowly the boy begins to speak. First in fragments, then in whispers, then in stories. And you begin to see it, this home that was once a hiding place, then a refuge, is becoming something else. A sanctuary, not of stone or doctrine, but of people, of pain that's been made into medicine, of silence turned into song, of lives once forgotten now stitched together into something whole. The brothel still stands. The shutters still open each evening, but fewer girls go in, and some who do don't stay, because now they know there's another door, a door that doesn't close behind you like a coffin, but opens wide like a pair of arms, and the ones who walk through it, they carry others with them. The seasons tip at last. Spring doesn't arrive all at once, no triumphal burst of warmth, no fanfare. It creeps in cautiously with buds that peer nervously from the ends of gray branches, with puddles that slowly dry into soft earth. The breeze loses its bite. The mornings arrive with birdsong instead of silence, And for the first time in what feels like years, the town breathes. Children return to the streets. The market swells again with root vegetables and wilted greens. The taverns buzz louder. And the brothel, well, it too seems to awaken. You walk past it now with a gaze honed by months of seeing, not just looking. The windows are brighter. The girls lean out more often, painted, powdered, beckoning. The patrons return steady, eager, oblivious. But something's changed. Not there. Not yet. Out here. At Agnes's cottage, there's movement. Tomas helps dig a trench along the side wall for new herbs. Marta plants string beans with expert fingers, lining the rows like a soldier preparing for battle. Agnes watches from the doorway with a blanket over her knees, her breath thinner, but still sharp with instruction. You sit beside her one evening as the sun slips behind the trees. She sips something bitter from a cracked cup. Tomas talks in his sleep, she says, matter-of-factly. You nod. So did Marta once. Agnes smiles faintly. Now she talks while she's awake. Endlessly. She learned that from you. No, Agnes says. She learned that from not dying. Silence settles between you again. It's the comfortable kind. Then she says, I want you to take them. You turn toward her confused. Take them, she doesn't look at you. Her gaze is fixed on the garden, where Marta crouches with a basket, and Tomas follows, imitating her movements clumsily. One day, when I can't anymore, you'll know when you don't protest, because deep down you already knew this moment would come. Her voice sounds more distant each week, her body slower. The winter cost her something, and she's not asking out of fear. She's planning. She's always been planning. That night after Marta and Tomas fall asleep, you find Agnes still awake, stirring something over the hearth. The light casts long shadows across her face, revealing every line and freckle, every scar. You were right, you tell her. She raises a brow. About what? There are more than two kinds of people. She chuckles. Of course I was. I'm older than God's patience. You grin, but she doesn't. You'll have to keep teaching them, she says softly. How to speak, how to notice, how to stop apologizing for surviving. You nod, unable to promise, but certain you will try. Days pass. The garden grows. Tomas builds a pen for 2 goats brought by a farmer in trade for healing his wife's cough. Marta begins teaching another girl, one who shows up bruised and hungry, asking for tea but staying for supper. Her name is Lise. She doesn't talk yet. She doesn't look anyone in the eye. But when Agnes lets her grind elder root without instruction, Lise doesn't flinch. She knows the weight. She knows the smell. You watch as the circle grows. And it does grow. Slowly, quietly, like moss on stone. A girl with a limp arrives next. Then a boy with a crushed hand. Then an older woman, once a servant in the manor, turned out after a fall that left her with a permanent stoop. She can't bend or lift, but she can sing. And so she does low humming songs in the evenings that make the whole cottage breathe deeper. Each new arrival brings their own piece of sorrow. Each arrival is absorbed. There are no sermons here, no rules carved in stone. Just tasks, patience, and stories. The work is constant tending, carrying, preparing, cleaning, But there's a rhythm to it, a steadiness. People grow stronger in the doing. One day Marta finds an injured dog in the woods, its leg torn its side, bleeding. She carries it back wrapped in her cloak. You help clean the wound. Tomas holds the animal's head as it whimpers. And the dog lives. You name it Nox. It sleeps by the fire, now curled tight like a secret. You don't talk about the brothel anymore. You don't need to. Its shadow stretches over everything. But here in this place, shadows are no longer feared. They are acknowledged, and then lived beyond. You return from market one day to find the whole cottage humming with energy. Lise has spoken just one word, a soft yes, when asked if she wanted more bread. Marta beamed. Tomas clapped. Even Knox barked. You find Agnes in the back near the edge of the woods, sitting on a stool where the sun breaks through the trees. She's wrapped in a shawl. Her eyes are closed. You call her name gently. She opens her eyes. I heard. You smile. She'll speak again, she says. They all will. Then she takes your hand, and it's the first time she's ever done it, without cause or urgency, just because. Her hand is warm, paper thin, trembling. You've built something, you tell her. No, she replies. We have. And in that moment beneath the rustling trees and the sun that no longer hides you, feel it. Not just survival, but life. Genuine, messy, defiant life. The brothel still stands. The world still wounds. But here among the herbs and firelight, the broken are healing. The lost are leading. The silenced are singing. And the woman who once led you through the smoke is passing on her torch. Agnes begins to fade in spring's full bloom. Not all at once. There's no dramatic collapse, no gasping final breath. Just a little less of her each morning. A slower rise. A heavier sigh. The cups she carries tremble more. Her steps become cautious, guarded. She rests more often by the doorway watching the garden instead of working in it. Her voice remains sharp, especially when Tomas forgets to stir the salve, but her laugh comes less often. She doesn't complain. Not once, but all of you feel it. And so the rhythm shifts again. Marta takes over more of the herb preparation. Her hands, once trembling, now move with steady confidence. She labels every jar in chalk, makes sure the dried roots don't mold. The mint stays fresh, the yarrow gets picked early before it wilts in the sun. Tomas becomes the runner. He carries poultices to the village, messages to the widow on the hill, dried comfrey, to the woman with the bent spine. No one questions him. His face, once closed, now holds an expression of quiet pride. He walks taller. Lise begins to speak more. Short sentences. Simple requests. Sometimes she even sings with the old woman who hums by the fire. Her voice is low and thin, but it holds. It holds. And you do what Agnes did. You watch. You listen. You patch what breaks. You soothe what can't be fixed. You find yourself repeating her phrases without realizing it. Use less than you think, boil it longer. Next time, breathe through it. You start to understand that none of her wisdom came from books. It came from being broken and choosing not to stay shattered. The town, too, has changed its rhythm. Word has spread, though no one says it aloud. They call Agnes's home the place where no one asks questions. People come more openly now. Not many, never in groups, but often enough that the path to the door is always worn, the gate never frozen shut anymore. A girl arrives with bruises and leaves with a balm. A boy brings an infected cut and returns the next week with bread as thanks. A mother brings her infant who won't stop crying and leaves with a ribbon soaked in chamomile tied gently around her wrist. The brothel notices. How could it not? Their new madam is a younger woman now, shrewd, sharp-tongued, and always watching from behind a veil of perfume and politeness. She's not cruel, not openly, but she's been sending word. A few of her girls have stopped coming back. Some never made it far. Some didn't make it at all. But others did, and those who did are remembered. One morning you wake to find a satchel left at the doorstep. No note, just a small, neat bundle, 3 handkerchiefs, a silver brooch, and a folded piece of cloth with a child's name stitched into it. Marta finds it first. She holds the brooch for a long time, then places it beside the herb jars. She made it out, she whispers. You don't need to ask who. The brothel will always pull. It will always try to reclaim, but its grip loosens each time someone chooses something else. And what was once unthinkable to walk away is becoming possible, gradually, quietly. It's mid-morning when Agnes finally tells you, I think it's time. You're sitting on the bench beneath the tree she planted last year. Its leaves are small and trembling, bright green against the sky. She's watching the light filter through the branches, her eyes glassy but calm. You nod. We're ready. She smiles, not because it's a pleasant thing to hear, but because it's the truth. She taught you all to prepare for this moment, and she's going to make sure you walk into it with your eyes open. I want to be buried by the roots, she says, where I can feed the garden. You don't cry, not yet. Not in front of her. She leans her head against your shoulder. Her bones are sharp now, her body nearly gone. I thought I would die in that room, she murmurs. You remember the one. Straw mattress, curtain for a door. Cold draft on my legs. You nod. But I didn't. I didn't die there. And I want you to promise me something. Anything. Make sure no one else does either. You squeeze her hand. Later that evening, you gather everyone, Marta, Tomas, Lice, the old woman who sings the girl who just arrived 2 days ago and still won't speak. You all sit on the floor together, the hearth crackling, the smell of mint thick in the air. Agnes speaks to each of them. She doesn't say goodbye. She says what they are. To Marta, you're the root, the one who holds. To Tomas, you're the bridge between what you were and what you're becoming. To Lice, you're the breath that starts again after the silence. To the girl, you're allowed to rest. You don't have to be strong yet. To the old woman, you remember the songs we forgot. And to you, you're the one who stays. That night she sleeps soundly. Her breathing is quiet. Her hands don't tremble. In the early hours when the sky is still black and the world silent, she exhales once long and slow and doesn't inhale again. No cries, no drama, just a soft leaving. You bury her beneath the tree as she asked. Marta sews a cloth to mark the spot stitched in white thread. She did not vanish. She became the soil. There is no priest, no sermon. Just you all kneeling in the damp earth, pressing your hands into the ground, whispering words that only grief understands. Later you sit by the hearth. No one speaks, but the fire burns, and the house stands. And the world, though quieter, does not end. Because what Agnes built is not in the walls or the jars or the firewood. It's in the hands that now know what to do. It's in the ones who stayed, and in the ones who will still come. The days after Agnes's passing settle like a soft dust over everything, never heavy, never loud, but present in every corner. You feel it in the pauses between footsteps, in the way Marta folds the linens a little more carefully, in how Tomas places each log on the fire, as though the fire itself needs comforting. Grief becomes another resident of the house. Not a guest to be fed or spoken to, but a quiet shadow at the table. And strangely, it doesn't smother. It binds. Not like chains, but like thread. Invisible, strong. It holds everyone a little closer than before. You take up the seat by the hearth, now the one Agnes always occupied. At first it feels wrong. Too soon. But Marta places the herb book in your lap and says simply, "She taught you." That's all. She doesn't mean just plants. She means how to carry, how to be the one who stays. And so you do. You begin speaking to visitors with more assurance. You teach Tomas how to bandage a wound without wincing. You show Lise how to prepare salves, how to spot fever in the eyes before it reaches the chest. You catch the new girl, Morel is her name, watching all of this with quiet attention. You don't ask her to help. She just begins. Cleaning bowls, bringing water, listening. Spring ripens. The garden comes alive. The goats are fat and content. The tree above Agnes's resting place blooms in white. Tomas says it looks like lace. Marta adds that it smells like lemon and honey when the wind's just right. Visitors keep coming. Women with stories stitched beneath their ribs. Men with secrets tucked in their collars. Children clinging to their mother's hems with wide, mistrustful eyes. You don't turn anyone away. You can't. Not after what Agnes taught you. One afternoon, you find a boy waiting by the path. Not Tomas. This one is older, lean, sharp-featured. He doesn't speak as you approach. Just stares at the door behind you. You can come in, you offer. He looks down at his feet. "I don't need help," he mutters. "I came to ask something." You wait. "There's a girl," he continues, "at the brothel, my sister. She won't leave." Your breath catches. She says she can't. She says she'll die if she tries. But I thought maybe you could talk to her. You nod slowly. "What's her name?" He swallows. "Nael." That night you sit by the fire and tell the others. Marta listens silently, one hand resting on the dog's back. Tomas's jaw tightens. Lise hugs her knees. No one asks what you're going to do, they know. The next day you walk the path alone. The brothel hasn't changed. Painted shutters, perfumed air. Girls in lace sleeves leaning just far enough. The madam is still the same young, calculating, always watching. When she sees you approach, she narrows her eyes but says nothing. You ask for Nael. At first the woman laughs. She's busy. You wait. Minutes pass. Then the madam sighs and disappears inside. She returns with a girl, thin blonde shoulders hunched like she's bracing for a blow. Nael. Her eyes go wide when she sees you. I'm not going, she says at once. You nod. That's fine. I can't leave. I understand. I'm not like the others. You meet her gaze. Neither was Agnes. Something shifts in her face. A pause. A crack. She folds her arms. If I run, she'll come after me. You know who she is. The madam. She might, you say, but not forever, and not alone. Nael doesn't answer. You leave without pressing her, but 3 nights later she arrives, just before dawn, mud on her hem, eyes wild, no belongings, nothing but a scar on her temple and her brother behind her breathless. You open the door. She steps inside. You give her tea, and another girl begins. From that day, things move faster. Mirelle teaches Nael to sew. Lice shows her where the nettles grow best. Thomas tells her in halting words that she doesn't have to talk about what happened unless she wants to. Marta gives her a cup of broth and says, "You don't owe anyone an explanation." Nael cries, just once, at night. Then she sleeps and stays. Word spreads. 1 girl becomes 2, then 4, then 6. A mother brings her daughter. A sister brings her brother. A woman who once cursed you in the market now leaves a bundle of wool on the doorstep without a word. The town begins to shift, not loudly, but slowly. People begin turning their heads toward the brothel, not just with shame, but with anger, and toward the cottage with hope. One morning, a paper is nailed to the brothel door. A list of names. Girls who vanished. Girls who died of fever. Girls who were lost to the night. Nael sees it first. She recognizes 3. Marta takes the paper, folds it, and buries it beneath the garden soil. We don't need monuments, she says. We need food, and stories, and peace. So you build. You add a second room to the house. You hang herbs from the rafters. You begin keeping written records of every person who comes, not for the world, just for you, for memory. Tomas carves Agnes's name into a wooden board and hangs it over the door. It says, "Here no one is owned," and below it, "No one is forgotten." People read it and weep. You don't think this is a revolution, not yet, but you think it might be the start of one. The board above the door changes everything, not because the words are particularly clever, not because anyone in power notices, but because it dares to say in ink and wood what no one else will, that here within these 4 walls people are not possessions. Here survival isn't sin and kindness isn't conditional. People start using the name, the house with the sign they say, Agnes's house, the place where no one is owned. Sometimes it's said with awe, sometimes with scorn, but it's said. And that's enough. You wake before the sun most days. There's always someone to tend a wound that opened again in the night, a cough that won't quit a child who can't stop shaking after sleep. You pour tea. You kneel by mats. You press compresses to swollen joints and hold hands that clench out of reflex. You're tired in a way that isn't fixed by rest, but it's the right kind of tired. Marta wakes after you. She always does. But once she's up, she moves with calm precision, lighting the hearth, checking the herbs, shooing Tomas away from anything too hot, too fragile. She's taller now, you realize. She walks like someone who's no longer afraid of being seen. Lice keeps track of inventory. She writes slowly, but she's learning. Mirel helps with laundry, then cuts firewood beside Tomas, who's grown strong enough to carry buckets in both arms without stopping to rest. Nael is quieter, but she listens. She's always listening. And the ones who arrive 1 or 2 a week now fit into the pattern, like threads into a loom. A boy with a broken arm from falling, which he won't explain. A girl with knotted hair who flinches when she hears raised voices. A pregnant woman who won't speak but holds your hand so tightly you lose feeling in your fingers. You never ask what happened, but eventually they tell you anyway. In whispers, in drawings, in the way they finally sleep through the night. And outside the town changes too. It doesn't transform overnight. But the brothel is quieter now. The lights are dimmed. Fewer girls lean from the windows. The madam begins sending her men to retrieve girls who've run. But they're slower, less sure, because they know. If they knock at your door, they'll leave empty-handed. If they threaten, they'll be watched. The townsfolk have started to care. Maybe not all of them. Maybe not loudly. But enough. A cobbler refuses service to a known brothel guard. A merchant leaves extra grain on your doorstep. A widow offers space in her barn for shelter. Even the firebrand friar, once red-faced and thunder-voiced, preaches quieter now. You think he's beginning to understand that sin isn't always in the body. Sometimes it's in the silence that lets harm live unchecked. Still, the threats don't vanish. One evening you find the herb jars shattered. The door hangs off its hinge. No one was hurt by luck, not design. But the message is clear. They want to remind you this world still belongs to men who buy silence. You clean up the mess in the dark. Marta finds more jars. Tomas repairs the door. And you hang the sign back up, splintered but still legible. Here no one is owned. The next morning there are 3 bundles of herbs on the doorstep. You don't know who left them. You don't need to. A week later you gather the house together, everyone who lives there. Everyone who's ever passed through and stayed in touch. You sit in a circle beneath the blooming tree, Agnes's tree. Its blossoms fall like snow, soft and fragrant. You ask them what they want. Marta says, a second garden, one just for flowers. Lice wants a proper table for writing. Nael says, a door that locks. Mirel wants a bell, so people can knock instead of just appearing. Tomas says nothing for a long time. Then finally, I want to teach boys what not to become. You nod. Later you carve a new board and hang it beside the first. It reads, this is a house of beginning. Over the next month you build that second garden. Marta fills it with color violets, daffodils, rosemary, mint. She says every flower should have a friend. Mirel builds the writing table. Lice paints the bell. Tomas writes the first lesson of his own in rough charcoal script. No means no. He nails it to a tree. Niall replaces the curtain on the front door with a real one. Heavy cloth stitched with care. It sways gently in the breeze, but it does not open without invitation. And you keep listening, watching, staying. You write every name. Not just those who live here now, but the ones who passed through and left part of themselves behind. Agnes, Corinne, Elena, the girl with powdered cheeks, the girl with the crooked smile, the boy who tried to walk in before he was old enough to survive it. You write them all, because stories are the opposite of disappearance. You remember one night long ago, Agnes said the brothel would never disappear. You're starting to think she might have been wrong, or at least that she didn't live long enough to see what the end would really look like. Not a riot, not a war, but this. A quiet door that stays open for the right reasons. A girl who dares to plant something that isn't food. A boy who writes the word no and teaches it like a prayer. A fire that never goes out. You look around at all of them gathered in the glow of sunset voices, overlapping with laughter hands stained with earth feet bare in the grass. And you think if Agnes could see this, she wouldn't say she built a home. She'd say she lit a fuse, and the flame is still spreading. The summer arrives in full. The air turns warm and thick with bee song. The herb garden flourishes rows of green tangled with color and scent. Marta's flower patch explodes into bloom, a riot of soft pinks and daring yellows. The goats chew lazily in the grass. Knox sleeps in the shade, ears twitching, belly rising and falling like a tide. And the house breathes. It's no longer quiet, not in the way it was when you first arrived. It hums now, with footsteps, with voices, with the thrum of something alive and unbreakable. There are always people coming and going, some staying a night, others a season. Some return after long absences with new scars and stories. Some write letters back instead, their handwriting shaky, their words always grateful. You've lost count of how many you've helped. You don't need the number. You only need their names. And every one of them is written down, pressed between pages and memories, anchored to a place that gave them back their voice. The brothel still stands. The shutters still open at night. The painted smiles still beckon. But it's shrinking slowly, visibly. The madam has grown quieter, her guards less aggressive. The town's appetite for that place is waning, not out of moral awakening perhaps, but because now there's an alternative, a new ritual, a different door. One afternoon, a man stands outside your fence. He doesn't speak, just watches the house. You recognize him from months ago, a regular patron, dressed cleaner than most, always with a coin pouch heavy on his belt. But he isn't here to threaten. He's just standing there like someone realizing they've arrived too late to a better world. You step out slowly. He lifts his eyes to yours, then turns and walks away. That night, Mirelle reads aloud from a letter sent by Corinne. She made it. She's safe. The baby is walking now. She works in a convent garden. She signs the letter with love and with both hands finally free. Marta weeps for the first time in months, not from sadness, but from something like joy. Lise writes back. Thomas insists on drawing a map so Corinne never gets lost, even if she returns in her dreams. Mirelle adds pressed flowers to the envelope. And Niall, quiet as ever, sews a soft cloth to wrap it in stitched with a single word in the corner. Stay. Later, you find her smoothing the cloth fingers, trembling. She was the first who left and didn't vanish, Niall says. She became someone else. Someone bigger. You nod. She's right. You all did. That evening around the hearth, Marta suggests something new. A gathering, she says. A day every year where they can all come back. A festival, Tomas asks, eyes wide. No, she says, smiling faintly. Not a festival, just a remembering. You look around, at the house that holds stories instead of secrets, at the garden grown from silence, at the children who used to flinch and now speak without fear, at yourself sitting in the place where Agnes once ruled like a storm wrapped in kindness. You think about that first night, the brothel, the smell of sweat and ale, the girl with powdered cheeks, the curtained doors, the ledger, the cries that no one answered. And you realize this is what healing looks like. Not sudden, not dramatic, but stubborn and daily and alive. So when the day comes midsummer under a bright and heavy sun, you prepare. You clean the house from eaves to stone. You decorate the door with rosemary and mint. You bake bread and boil tea. You light candles not for mourning, but for memory. And they come, one by one, in twos, in groups. Corinne with her daughter holding her hand. The girl with the crooked smile who now teaches letters in a distant village. A man who once sat in silence by your fire and now speaks to children in the town square about safety. A boy with a burn scar who doesn't hide anymore. An old woman who brings you a jar of honey and whispers, "I never thought I'd live to see this." Marta greets each of them. Tomas brings water, bread, wine. Lysant collects their names in a new book. Niall sets a candle before the tree and stands there long after the others have moved on, murmuring something to the roots that only they can hear. You don't make speeches. You don't need to. Their presence is enough. When the sun sets and the sky blooms orange and purple, you all sit in the grass. You pass around a single loaf. Everyone tears a piece. Everyone shares it. No ceremony. No preaching. Just a feast made of survival. The laughter that night echoes all the way to the edge of the town. The brothel's windows are dark. No one answers when someone knocks. The house stands, alive, awake, strong, and so do you. You carry them all. Agnes, Elena, Corinne, Niall, Marta, even yourself. The version of you who first walked into that place full of questions, full of helplessness. You've changed. And now you're not just the one who stays. You're the one who shows others how. You made it. You walked through the cold alleyways, the dim corridors, the whispers and cries of forgotten rooms. You saw the world that hid behind velvet curtains and iron ledgers where survival wore rouge and pain was counted in coin. You witnessed the slow, brutal machinery of control and the even slower, quieter work of healing. You followed Agnes through smoke. You stood in a circle of girls who refused to vanish. You watched brokenness turn into balm and silence into story. And now you can rest. Let the weight of this world settle behind your eyes, not as horror, but as understanding. The house still stands even now, in some version somewhere tucked between judgment and mercy growing herbs, and hope catching those who fall without asking where they've come from. Close your eyes and imagine it. The creak of the wooden door, the scent of rosemary, the soft thud of feet on the floorboards, a warm fire and hands that do not take but tend. You are safe there. You always were. Breathe out slow. You've seen what most never will, and you didn't look away. That alone is enough. Let it go now. You've walked the full path. The lights are dim. The voices are quiet. The healing is real. Sleep.